And thanks for joining me tonight. The first thing I'd like to do is to refresh a little bit, not too much actually. So just the key terms. We discussed the key terms in the international trades, and we also discussed the theories of international trade that includes two schools, actually, the classical theories and also the modern theories of international trade. Okay. Hi, Nasmo. Can you hear me fine? Can you hear me well?
Yes, I certainly can.
Fantastic, fantastic. This session is recorded, and I'm going to upload this the recording to YouTube channel. So yes, feel free to mute your video, but yeah, I turn my video on, so it should be fine for me. Okay. All right. So this is the again. These are the things that we discussed last week, okay? And tonight we are going to discuss this, the globalization, and the other thing is we are going to discuss the assessment again, to have a look at the assessment again, and yeah, that's basically the ones that we are going to, the other two that we are going to discuss tonight, and tomorrow we are going to discuss the environmental forces, okay? Okay, so what is globalization? This is what we mean by globalization, the close integration of countries and people of the world. So when you think about it, it's getting shrinking. The globe is shrinking. Okay, so I think I got feedback on the audio system. I will. Okay. Okay, I think it's better now. Right. So yes, that's what we mean by the globalization. Okay, especially many years ago, the communication scholars suggest that with the mass media, with the growing trend of the mass media back in 1960s and so on and so forth, well, people watch TV, people read the newspaper and so on and so forth. Communication scholars suggest, well, we have our world is shrinking actually. Okay, now we are we are now in the internet era, where everything can be reached from our computer. Okay, so you could imagine that how fast the development is. So we are getting more and more integrated. Okay, not only in terms of communication, but it is also in terms of the economies, where one thing that happens in one part of the globe might affect the other parts of the globe as well. Okay, so you could last week we discussed about the trade war between China and the US, and it may affect some other countries as well. And the economists are watching on it closely in terms of understanding what impact it will bring to the countries. Okay, right. So yes, and many years ago as well, there is another management scholar, management consultant named Kenichi Omei, who worked for BCG, suggesting that we live in the interlinked economy. That's what he suggested at that time. So yes, we are getting closer and closer in terms of the integration. Okay. In saying that, in this topic, we are going to discuss briefly about the international cooperation, and we also need to look at that there are some trade barriers as well that have been implemented. Okay. All right. So yes, as part of the globalization, we do international business. And the reason for that is because there are some benefits, right, for both consumers and also the organizations. Okay, I believe you also have done transactions, and you may have done online shopping, for instance, and the products that you purchase, the products or service that you purchase, may be supplied from overseas. Okay, so across the border. right? So customers also enjoy the benefits because they have more options, right? So from the customer's perspective, we have more options with the growing trend of the international business. Okay, so when the companies have made themselves available globally to be accessed by us, it also gives the customers options, right? Now, you may recall that from the economic management perspective, when the customers have more options, that means they also can get a better bargaining position. Okay, so therefore the customers love that as well. Okay. Now, from the company's perspective, it also provides the organizations with lots of benefits, such as expression of freedom, because they can expand the business anywhere they can, including to any types of with any types of products or services. So that opens more opportunities for them in terms of from the business perspective. Okay, prosperity and innovation. It also offers them the opportunities to be more innovative. Okay, now if we look at from the economic management perspective, well, there are two thoughts in terms of how the economy of a country must be managed. You may recall the communism system, and the other one is the capitalism system or the private enterprise system, where the scholars that support the idea of communism system believe that the capitalism system will collapse at some point of time because they will create gaps in terms of the haves and haves not until it create the revolution. But the scholars that support the idea of capitalism system or private enterprise system support that hang on a second, it won't collapse because we are always able to create economic growth, to drive the economic growth. So that means we'll provide more opportunities, and some countries actually that adopt the private enterprise system or the capitalism system also provides with the social welfare system. In Australia, we have the Centrelink benefits and so on and so forth to help that that also plays a critical role in there. Okay. Now, if we go back to the economic growth supported by the capitalism system, we actually look into entrepreneurship in there. Okay, there are always entrepreneurs that drive the economic growth. Okay, now when we think about it further, how do these entrepreneurs drive the economic growth? It is actually through the innovation. Okay, the innovation in here actually opens more opportunities for everybody. Okay, so when the entrepreneurs launch the new innovative products or services, okay, and if once it is successful, they expand the business quickly with the globalization era like now. They can expand the product, they can launch the product very quickly to the other parts of the world. Okay, and that offers job prospects as well for everybody. That's what they suggest. Okay. And from culture perspective, people get more exposure to various cultures, basically because the products that we introduce to their markets may also contain certain values, right? If you look at the innovation, for instance, that we introduce to the market, the innovation may require us to adopt new lifestyle, for instance. Okay, imagine that the products like iPad, for instance, product like smartphone, for instance, when iPhone was introduced, we changed our behavior. Okay, so previously we just used mobile phone as doing call, text, and a little bit of internet connection in those days. Back in those days, you may recall those things, guys, I believe. Now, when RIM BlackBerry and iPhone, when RIM BlackBerry introduced the BlackBerry, and Apple introduced their own smartphone version, the iPhone, people change their behavior. Well, I can control my communication now. My communication needs are in my hands. Okay, I can connect to the internet. I can connect to Facebook. I can connect to anything when I'm on the train. Okay, you just observe on the train, what do people do? Well, they look at the mobile devices, right? And they may hook to their headsets to listen to music or watch a video and so on and so forth. Okay? So that's the cultural influence as well that we bring when we introduce the innovation. Okay. It also promotes fairness with the merchandise promoted internationally. People can now easily make price comparison, and that is pretty obvious for us. When we want to buy something, okay, what do? Well, we go online. Okay, we type in our Google search box, type okay, which merchant that can provide us with with a better value in terms of price and service. Okay, so we compare those things. Okay, right. So that's they are the benefits basically in terms of international business. Okay, right. Now this is also showing us as kind of summary in terms of benefits. Why do companies perform international business? Yes, volume growth. Okay, when we start the business, we may focus on the domestic market. Okay, I must admit that some entrepreneurs think about global business as soon as they start the business. Okay, they think about doing e-commerce where they will service the international customers as well. Okay, let's say that traditionally people start the business from and building the business for domestic market. Okay, they install the capacity. Okay, and they install the capex, capital expenditure, the machine, okay, equipment, okay, in the plant. If you think about manufacturing industry, okay, and at some point of time they will drive the growth further, and they install a second line, the third line, so on and so forth, until they think, okay, hang on a second, where else can we grow the business? We've got several lines in here already in our manufacturing facility, right? Therefore, they will start looking into the international operation as well to find more volume growth opportunity. Okay, and it also provides us to build global brands. Okay, building global brands is basically the ambition of all global players at the moment. It's kind of building the identity of the brand that they introduce to the market. Okay. Now, the other thing that we also need to consider is that domestic market may have been well serviced, okay, whilst we still have the capacity. Capacity is still huge, okay, the capacity is still huge in our plant, okay, so yeah, what else can we do? Okay, let's think about the market in overseas, the overseas markets, okay. Let's look at the globe, which one, let's slice them into several regions and think about it more carefully. Okay, so that's there are some benefits. Okay, now the other one that I'd like to bring to you is the alignment of expertise. Okay, it is also in line with the Porter's theory, with the competitive advantage theory that we discussed last week, that we can also get the benefit if we have the international operations. We can get the benefit of aligning the expertise. Okay, when we build our operation in some markets, okay, and if we have been servicing this market successfully, we will build skills and capabilities in that market. Okay, as a result, we can transfer that, we can align that benefit, we can align that expertise to the other expertise, right? Now, in Australia, for instance, if you look at the Australian grocery store, for instance, you may find that Kraft, for instance, they source their biscuit products from Asia, from China and Indonesia, in the Australian supermarket and shelves, into the Australian supermarket shelves, for instance. Okay, Why is that? Well, these types of biscuits are daily biscuits. Okay, so what are the driving force people buy these type of biscuits? Okay, it has to meet the daily taste needs. Okay, the daily, the taste that it has to meet that standard for daily needs. Okay, and the other thing that we also need to consider is that the price should be for daily consumption. Therefore, it can't be that expensive. Yeah, the best way is to source from overseas. That's what I think. Okay, so they source these products from overseas, kind of alignment of expertise, right? And global companies may also take that alignment to the next level, actually. Okay, not only in terms of sourcing or supplying the products, okay, but they may also source the talents from the other markets as well. They may look at the human resources profile of each operation. Okay, so when a job for a vacancy happen, when they have a vacancy in some market, they are going to look at the talents from the other markets, from the global talent pool or the regional talent pool. Okay, so there's some benefits, guys, in terms of the international business. What is the downside? Well, of course, the more the larger our operation is, like the advice from the economists, okay, the more complexity that we are going to have, okay. It is probably creating the more red carpet bureaucracy that leads to these economies of scale, okay. So remember, the volume growth in here actually should actually provide us with the opportunity to increase our efficiency, okay, to increase our economies of scale, where the cost should be lower than the output that we produce, okay. But with the more complicated operation that we have, okay, we may create more layers, management of, management. One thing that people also remind us is we may in fact have these economies of scale where the the efficiency probably is not going to be optimized. Okay, right. The other thing that the other issues that I'd like to bring to you is some strategic issues, such as how do you maintain consistency across the markets we operate. Okay, that is actually a big headache, okay, in the international operations. Okay, think about a brand, for instance, that we built. Okay, the reason why we have the international operation is the brand. Okay, we want to build a global brand. Okay, then building a brand requires us to be consistent. Okay. Google brand that is perceived in a certain way in their home market in America, for instance, should be perceived in the same way in Australia or anywhere else they operate. Okay, Tim Tam, another brand, okay, an icon, an Australian icon brand, has been perceived in a certain way in the home market. Then when it travels across the globe, we also expect that brand to be perceived in the same way. Okay, and in terms of consistency, it's not only about the brand; it's also about the operation. How do we standardize it, or to be more strategic, we also need to ask, can we standardize it, or do we need to standardize it, actually? Okay, because we also need to consider the local culture where we are going to operate. Okay, there are some issues in here as well that we also need to be aware of. Okay, can we standardize for instance, the business process, which is another issue that we also need to consider. Okay, how do we develop new product, for instance? Okay, are we going to conduct research, conduct consumer research, and so on and so forth? If we conduct consumer research, how do we conduct it? Have we got the consistent methods across the markets that we operate? Okay, so there are several issues in terms of consistency. Okay, at a more detailed level, we also ask ourselves, are we going to have how are we going to achieve the consistency in terms of in terms of our branding, for instance. Okay, how close should our what do we mean by consistency in here? Okay, if you that actually bring us to another issue about the standardization adaptation to the host market. Okay. We also need to think about the corporate culture, where we need to look at the local markets and also the host market and also the home market. How do we merge these two cultures, basically, or do we need to do that, or can we allow the other market, the host market, to operate based on their culture? Okay, and we just need to we just need to agree with the objectives, right? Look, there's no black and white in here in terms of, yes, this is the correct one and this is not the correct one. It goes back to the company's historical background, but goes back to the management experience as well, okay? And of course, how do we achieve the alignments, right? The case of General Electric is an interesting one. When they acquire energy business in Europe, they allow this company to operate themselves because GE in this instance understands that. Hang on a second. Yes, these guys know what they are doing, so let us let them work with their own expertise, and we just discuss the strategic objectives with these guys. Okay, so that's that is an example that but and some other companies may want to have a larger control in terms of the global operations to merge the culture, to merge to achieve the alignment. Okay. All right. Now we are actually yes, we know the benefits. Okay, we know the reasons why people expand to global markets. Okay. The next question is actually about the protection, about the challenges in terms of operating in these global operations. Okay, so you may also recall that when the U.S. government is having a trade war with the Chinese government, some key players like Apple, for instance, have already shouted their concerns with these trade wars, right? Because they may affect the operations of these companies, right? So we have two things in here: protectionism and also trade restrictions. The issues with the in terms of the international trade is the local business owners threatened by the multinational companies or global companies. Therefore, they normally request the protection for their own industry. Okay. The protectionist legislation can be in the context of tariffs, right? So they charge taxes like the one that Trump is implementing to the Chinese products, and also the Chinese governments do the same thing. Or quotas, right? So they limit the amount of goods that can be imported to their country. Okay, so there are the two things that they may do in terms of protectionism. Okay. All right, so this is another one, guys, in terms of the drivers of globalization, the sales growth, okay, global linkages, okay, interlinked economy that's what we discussed before, which is also in the same spirit with Kenichi Omei's thoughts about our economy has become more and more interlinked. Yes, we have some barriers in terms of protectionism, but again, it is closer in terms of link. Okay, cost factors. Again, this is actually related to the economies of scale. Single country operation may not be large enough. We may have the capacity to do so. And if the capacity is large, but the demand in domestic market is not enough for the capacity that we have, then we are going to have a inefficiency in here. Okay. The other one is the environmental factors, where the technological factors, in this instance, the digital technology plays an important role as well to help us to be a global player. Okay. Well, technically speaking, when you when you set up a website, you are actually exposed to the globe, actually, to the customers globally. Okay? And competitive factors that helps us to remain competitive because of the operations, the global operations. We are going to have the opportunity to reduce the cost, since the economies of scale will be improved from economic management perspective. Okay. Right. Just the main international cooperation. We know we have the WTO, World Trade Organization, replacing GATT in 1996, and their spirit, the WTO spirit, is to pursue the reductions in tariffs on manufactured goods, as well as the liberalization of trade in agriculture and services. Okay, so their focus is actually to push for liberalization of foreign investments and trade policies such as competition policy, labor standards, and also censorship. Okay, so that is actually their mission. Now, whether we are going backwards with today's trade war, you have your own. I believe you have your own thoughts about it. Okay. We also have some, regional cooperation, such as NAFTA, for instance, the North America Free Trade Association. And in Asia Pacific, we have the APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, where they discuss, tariffs, they discuss quotas, they discuss the goods they expect to be imported freely, for instance, and so on and so forth, or exported to be, without a certain level of tax, for instance. Okay, and in saying that, we also know we have bilateral cooperation between two countries. Okay, like the Indonesian government, for instance, talked to the Vietnamese government to discuss the trades, and the Australian government discussed with the Indonesian government and Chinese governments, and so on and so forth, to discuss the trading terms more, closely between the two countries. All right. Guys, just a bit of summary. So this topic is actually about the driving forces behind globalization. We discussed about the concept of globalization itself, the issues of globalization, and also the international cooperation. In tomorrow's session, we are going to discuss the business environment. We are going to discuss. We are going to cover this in 2 sessions, actually. And after that, I do expect that we are all ready to move on with the assessments. Okay. Any questions before we move on to our assessment discussion tonight?
No, nothing from me.
No. Okay.
Thank you.
No, all right. Saman, how about you, Saman? Any questions from you, mate?
She's working.
She left. Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. What I'm going to do next is to, What I'm going to do next is to discuss the assessments. Okay. Oops, sorry. Not that one. Okay. Okay. Guys, I do expect that you're aware that the assessment is due on Friday, week 6. I've end of module 3, or and I do expect that you have downloaded the assessment. Okay, and I would recommend you to have, to nominate the company and also 2 markets, all right, for you to start analyzing. Okay, so this is basically the assessments. Okay, the assessment brief. Okay, it's due on Friday, week 6, and please refer to the due dates that I have posted on the announcement board. Okay, so the purpose of assessment 1, which is an individual assessment, is actually to perform the environmental analysis of the countries or markets that we are going to select. Okay, therefore we need to nominate 2 markets. Okay, we analyze the environmental forces of each market, and based on that we are going to make a decision. Okay, yes, this is the market that we want to be in. Okay, with both with the analysis of both markets' environmental forces. Okay, so that's basically the the assessment all about. Okay, so if I can put them into a little bit of drafts, okay, or advice, if you like. Okay, you may want to start with the introduction. Okay, here you introduce the company. Okay, introduce the company. Okay, when you introduce the company, you introduce the background of the company and also the products. Okay, or the main products or services. Okay, now I've got a questions. Eddie, can you recommend me which company I can work on? Well, look, I may be biased, right? I may be biased in here, okay? Because I'm coming from consumer-oriented industry, so I may recommend you that kind of business, okay, which may not be suitable for you, all right? Now, when you select the company, okay, make sure that this company operates in Australia. Okay, it doesn't have not necessarily an Australian company. Okay, it could be a global company based in America, but you have the you take the position as the regional headquarter in Australia, not necessarily an Australian company. Okay, it can be a global company. Okay.
What do you mean by the 2 markets, Eddie?
Hang on a second. That also operates in Australia. Say it again, Mike.
What do you mean by 2 markets? You were saying about two markets.
2 countries.
2 countries. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you select 2 countries. Okay. Beyond Australia, obviously. Okay. Make sure they have not operated in these countries, in these 2 countries. Okay. They may have some export business, which is fine. Okay. Does it answer your question about the markets?
No, thanks.
Does it answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, good. Okay. And the next thing that we need to do is actually the analysis, the environmental analysis. Okay.
Okay.
I apologize. Here, after we select the market, I don't know, guys, whether you can see. Okay, I think this is better. I just enlarged the screen. Okay, and introduce these 2 markets. Introduce these 2 countries. Okay, let's say we select, we nominate India, and the other one is China, for instance. We introduce these markets. India is a country that has this population and so on and so forth, and China is another major country in Asia that contains that has this number of population and so on and so forth. You briefly introduce them, right? Now, the next one is the environmental analysis. Okay, this is where we analyze political, economic. Okay, I'll just put them into macro environmental forces. Okay, that contains These guys here, political, economic, okay, social, cultural, and technological, okay, for these two markets, okay, two markets, right? And after that, we analyze micro environmental actors, okay, that contains the company itself, okay, the customers, competitors, okay, suppliers, public, and marketing intermediaries, okay, or resellers, okay, distributors and retailers. All right. Now, if you are doing services industries, it may be different to this one. Okay. So again, this we are going to discuss tomorrow. We are going to discuss the macro environmental forces. And next Friday, we are going to discuss this guys here, the micro environmental actors, right? And after that, we are going to analyze the evaluation factors, right? The evaluation matrix, matrix, okay? The evaluation matrix will show us, if you look at the presentation slides that I uploaded, towards the end of that presentation, you will find a template of the evaluation matrix. This is the one that we are going to discuss, okay? And the evaluation matrix should show you the rating scale, if you like, of these two markets, okay? Obviously, the market or the country that that has been rated as higher at a higher scale will be the one that we want to penetrate, okay? And that will be the one that we'll recommend, okay? And the other thing I'd like to highlight is make sure that you show your research, okay? Others show your research, okay? A lot of things in here are basically the secondary data research, okay? And remember, Turnitin Similarity Index as well, okay? We expect you to be less than 20% or similarity index, okay? And make sure that you reference, okay? So that's basically the assessment, guys, in a nutshell, okay? Does it help?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Craig, does it help you, mate?
It does, yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem, no problem. Okay, so just assessment 1 advice. Okay, I'm going to upload it to our to the portal. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a better idea in terms of what the assessment looks like. Okay, this is assessment 1. Assessment 2 is actually the entering strategy. If you look at the connection between assessment 1 and assessment 2. In other words, these two assessments basically bring our entry strategy, starting from the selection, market selection. This is the market that we select, and this is our entry strategy, okay? From marketing perspective, HR, operations, and so on and so forth, okay? All right, any questions?
No, thanks.
No? How about you, Craig? Any questions from you, mate?
I think I will, and it really concerns which company I track down, but can I send you an email on it, please?
Yep, no problem.
Excellent,
all right,
thank you.
Please do so. All right. All right, guys, if that's the case, then I'm going to off you from the hook. I'll see you tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah, good night.
Brilliant. Bye.
Okay, bye.